Okay, I think we can make a start. Welcome everyone to this virtual meeting of Kensington and Chelsea's Planning Committee. This meeting is being held in accordance with government regulations that allow councils to hold virtual meetings, and obviously we are following the government's guidance. I'm Councillor James Husband, Chairman of the Planning Committee, and I'm joined this evening by four of my fellow councillors. Now, perhaps in turn, we can just come up and introduce ourselves, putting video on and just saying hello. So Mo, Councillor Bakhtiar, would you like to go first?
Good evening, everyone. This is Councillor Mohammed Bakhtiar, St. Helens Ward Councillor and member of Planning Application Committee.
Great, thank you. And Tom, Councillor Tom Bennett. Tom?
Hello everyone, Councillor Tom Bennett here, Councillor for Redcliffe Ward.
Thank you. And Walla, Councillor Walla Idris.
Yeah, good evening everyone, Councillor Walla Idris, and I'm Councillor for Brompton and Handstown.
Great, thank you. And finally, Councillor Charles O'Connor. Charles.
Good evening, Charles O'Connor, Councillor for Holland Ward.
Great, thank you very much. It will be the five of us who are councillors who will be making the decisions on the cases in front of us this evening. We're also joined by a number of officers who will present the cases and also advise us. This evening, the presenting officer will be Joe Whitworth. Joe, would you like to just come up on video and just say hello?
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, Joe Whitworth. I'm a Principal Planning Officer for the Council.
Yes, great. And we're also joined by Joe's manager, one of the senior planners, Martin Lomas. Martin, you're there, yeah?
Yes, hello, Martin Lomas. I'm the Strategic Development Team Leader at RBKC.
Very good. And the officer team is led by Amanda Reid, who is Director of Planning and Place. Amanda, maybe you'd like to just say hello as well.
Good evening, Chairman. Good evening, members of the committee and members of the public. My name is Amanda Reid and I'm the Director of Planning and Place for the Royal Borough of Kensington and Chelsea.
That's great, thank you. If any other officers need to speak during the evening, then I'll introduce them and make clear who they are. I've been asked to make sure that not too many of us are on video unless it's necessary. So please, can everyone switch their video off and put their microphone on mute unless you're about to speak. And finally, if you've attended one of our meetings before, you'll recognise the procedure we have for applications. However, I would just like to emphasise, despite it being a virtual meeting, that all councillors have received the reports, representations, and also the addendum report, which has been circulated. And that all forms part of our decision making this evening. So if I can now move on to the agenda. Apologies for absence. I think everyone who should be here is here. Declarations of interest. Are there any declarations? No, I take silence as there being none. Are there any other declarations? Again, I think there are none. Now, can I turn quickly to the minutes of the meeting held of the committee on the 23rd of April. Now, those have been circulated. I should just point out there's been a very slight amendment because someone who was an objector at that meeting to an application actually was speaking on behalf of some neighbours, and that the minutes have been slightly amended to reflect that. So can I will take silence as agreement. Are those minutes agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you very much, Mo. Good, so they are agreed. Okay, so we can now move on to the main business this evening, which is to consider 4 applications. We are going to start with the application at 54 St Helens Gardens. We will then consider Acklam Road, Kensal Road, and finally Hewer Street. And I think Joe Whitworth, Joe is going to present all 4 applications, but obviously we'll be making individual decisions on each one. So Joe, when you're ready, I think over to you. Yeah.
Thank you, Chairman. Before I started on the first application, I just wanted to set some of the context behind these with regards to the Council's New Homes Development Programme. The programme is a council commitment to deliver 600 new homes, of which 300 are to be at social rent. The following 4 applications to be considered by the committee tonight form the first phase of that programme, and they seek to deliver the first 97 homes. While it is important, of course, for each application before you to be assessed on its own merits, a portfolio approach to affordable housing, which allows individual sites to be flexible in provision of housing requirements, as long as the phase as a whole meets development plan requirements and housing need, is a material consideration, and the portfolio approach is accepted. Moving on to the first application, which is 54 St Helens Gardens. 54 St Helens Gardens is situated in the Oxford Gardens Conservation Area. It fronts St Helens Gardens itself to the west and the rear gardens of St Quentin Avenue properties to the south. There is currently a 2-storey building on the site, which is identified as making a negative contribution to the conservation area. The street has a variety of built forms, and the site is located between 2 neighbouring residential buildings, which are divided into flats. A large Category A London plane tree is located in the front garden. The application would see the demolition of the existing building and its replacement with a predominantly 4-storey building, with 3 main storeys and a setback top storey fronting the street, and a part 2-storey rear extension. It should be noted that the application was amended following initial neighbour consultation, and the rear extension element reduced from 3 to 2 storeys in height. The proposed building would provide 8 new homes, of which 4 would be market, 2 would be discounted London living rent, and 2 would be social rent. The proposals would also feature landscaping to the front and rear garden and other associated works. There's a short video here showing the built context, but can members please click play for themselves, as I think everyone needs to control it. So it shows the existing buildings and the proposed building appearing in its place, first looking northeast, now southwest, and now northwest. The proposed layout would see new wheelchair access provided through a re-landscaped front garden, and all of the new homes accessed through the same front door. Access to the rear, where there are sitting areas for residents, a landscaped garden and a new cycle store, is either through the building itself or an access way to the side of the property. This CGI shows the proposed building in more detail, with the 3 main stories and the setback top story facing the street. This shows the rear of the building in relation to neighbours, with the amended 2-storey rear extension held to align with the rear building line of number 64. And this shows a closer view of the rear elevation. The proposals would deliver 10 new homes, of which 51% would be affordable by floor space. The tenure split and the unit mix are broadly compliant with the requirements of the development plan, particularly considering the wider Phase 1 portfolio's delivery of 73% affordable housing by floor space. It's also important to note that across the portfolio, the schemes have been developed in partnership with the Council's housing team to directly meet the most pressing need for housing in the borough. The new homes are tenure blind, of a very high quality, and would make a valuable contribution to the borough's housing stock. The new building would be of high architectural quality and of an appropriate scale and massing, responding well to local character and context, as well as replacing an existing building that makes a negative contribution to the conservation area. It would optimise the site for much needed housing and overall would enhance the character and appearance of the conservation area. Although the building would increase the built form on site and certainly be more noticeable than the existing two-storey dwelling, the proposals would not harmfully increase the sense of enclosure experienced by residents nor impact on privacy. The scheme has been assessed using the BRE guidance, and only one window of those assessed at neighbouring 8A St Quentin's Avenue would fail to meet the guidance. Even this loss is only marginally outside of those considered acceptable by the BRE guidance and is unlikely to be a noticeable reduction for occupants. In addition, the proposals would be acceptable with regards to transport, would ensure retention of the most important tree and high quality replacement landscaping to the front and rear, and would meet relevant climate change, sustainability and environmental matters. The proposals would bring with them significant benefits, including the delivery of much needed high quality housing, the optimisation of the site for residential use, and an enhancement to the character and appearance of the conservation area. There is no identified conflict with the development plan resulting from the proposals. That concludes the presentation, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Joe. Very good. If I can now ask Andrew Parisi, who's an objector who lives a couple of doors along from the site. Andrew, are you able to join us? Yeah.
Here I am.
Yeah. So please, when you're ready, you've got up to 3 minutes to make your. Thank you.
Okay, here we go. My name's Andrew Parisi. I live with my wife Tanya at number 58 St Helens Gardens. We've lived here for 25 years. Thank you for this opportunity to speak at this meeting. We obviously support the Council's NHDP scheme, especially with regard to this overlooked site. However, we have two main objections to this proposal, which we felt weren't properly addressed in the report. Our first objection centres around the proposed cantilevered ground floor, which is designed to protect the roots of the plane tree in the front garden. It's clear that the developers understand the damage that tree roots from a tree this size can do to a new build, and this is obviously a costly piece of mitigation, which will also protect the new building. Unfortunately, allowing these roots to continue to grow in this way, which this mitigation will provide, will further endanger our house at number 58, number 56, who we share a parking wall with, and also damage at number 52, which is the block on the other side of the new build. All three buildings have clearly been the victim of significant subsidence, and over several claims, the culprit remains to be the plane tree at number 54. In our original objection, I submitted our building surveyor's report, which you may have there prepared for us, that identified this tree's roots as the main culprit in our subsidence damage claim. In our statement, it says the structural engineering planning statement explicitly states that the proposed pile foundation design will allow the roots of the plane to grow under the new building and extend further than currently permitted. It's reasonable to presume that this will in due course extend the zone of influence on the plane on the surrounding properties and exacerbate the problem of subsidence that affects them. In fact, at the moment, it's so bad that I'm 7 inches taller from the door of my living room than I am when I get to the bay window. So we obviously appreciate the late intervention of the tree surgery, but the tree was neglected for many, many years, which is why it's grown so large and poses such a threat. So we'd really like Corporate Property Division, if possible, to have a look at providing some mitigation or future damage prevention for us householders at number 58, 54, 52, sorry, 56 and 52, who will continue to be affected by this root damage. The second point, very briefly, is light and privacy. We were a bit surprised not to have been included in the light survey or consulted about it. Currently, we have a ground floor extension with a very large window at the far end, which faces south onto the north elevation, and we'll have a window from that elevation looking straight into that room. So if there's any chance of being able to make some adaptation for that, and also to address some of the privacy issues that we'll face with the balconies at the far end as well. I think that's both my points, and thank you very much for your time and for listening.
Very good. Thank you very much. So now if I can ask Helen Nally on behalf of the applicant. Helen, can you join us? And similarly, you have up to 3 minutes to speak.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair, members. I'm a planning consultant acting on behalf of the Royal Borough's New Homes Delivery Team regarding the proposals for 54 St Helens Gardens, which will deliver much needed affordable and market housing in the borough. The proposal has been comprehensively assessed by officers in their report and their presentation, which was subject to extensive and ongoing discussions with neighbouring residents and the Royal Borough's planning and technical specialist officers through the formal pre-application process. During this period of consultation and engagement, the scheme was amended and refined to respond to matters and comments raised. I'd like to take this opportunity to draw committee's attention to the key aspects and benefits of the scheme, which are as follows. In terms of urban design and architecture, the existing dwelling currently makes a negative contribution to the conservation area. It's set back from the street and being only 2 storeys is out of scale with its immediate neighbours. The proposed building, with its 3-storey plus mansard form, detailed elevational treatments in the form of bay windows, and high quality materials, is in keeping with the surrounding local character, makes a positive enhancement and contribution to the conservation area compared to the existing building, whilst also protecting the large, high quality London plane tree in the front garden. In relation to neighbouring amenity, we've worked extensively to ensure the amenity of neighbouring residents will be safeguarded. And following officer advice, the height of the rear extension was reduced by 1 storey to improve the sense of enclosure and privacy, and in relation to daylight and sunlight. The applicant is committed to ensuring any construction works connected to the erection of the building are undertaken efficiently, safely, and with proper consideration of neighbouring properties and residents, in compliance with the Considerate Constructor Scheme and the Council's Code of Construction Practice. I'd like now to draw the committee's attention to the critical benefit of the application, which is the provision of 8 new homes for residents of the borough through the redevelopment of a brownfield site. Proposed dwellings include 2 social rented and 2 intermediate rent affordable homes and 4 open market tenure homes. 4 of the 8 units will have their own private amenity space, and all units will either be dual or triple aspect. They will share the same access point and communal facilities, including access to a landscaped garden to truly foster an inclusive community. In accordance with policy, energy efficiency and sustainability measures have been built in, along with cycle and waste storage facilities. These homes will be delivered as part of phase 1 of the Council's New Homes Development Programme, along with the other applications being reported to committee this evening, and demonstrate the commitment to placemaking, social investment and providing good quality mixed tenure homes. In summary, the proposal is considered to accord with the policies of the development plan and responds positively to the relevant material considerations. On behalf of the New Homes Delivery Team, we therefore welcome officers' positive recommendation and respectfully encourage the committee's positive consideration of the scheme. Thank you.
Good, thank you very much. Now, questions from colleagues, and I think Councillor Bakhtiar, you'd like to go first, yeah?
Thank you, Chairman. I was going to mention the tree anyway, because I am aware that insurance companies are insisting to cut down some big trees, and they've been doing this all over London. And I personally had some complaints in my ward of St Helens. Looking at the big tree in front of this house, we have a question of protecting the tree while looking after the neighbor's interest at the same time. So my question to Andrew, the objector, is, what do you want us to do exactly? What condition would you like to see to enable us to help you this evening?
Thank you very much for the question. Yes, really what we're looking at is a contribution, some kind of mitigation that if this tree is going to continue to be allowed to grow and the roots to proliferate underneath neighbouring buildings as well as underneath the new build, it's pretty clear, I think, that we will have continuing subsidence problems. So there are two ways of approaching that. One is to reduce the height of the tree considerably, well, not even considerably, but just enough so that the roots aren't drawing up as much moisture as they normally do for a tree of this size. The second thing would be to at least maybe come some way to finance underpinning of our property, at least in 52A. I know that 56, which we share a party wall with, is council owned. But you can actually see the way in which this building is moving. It's almost being sucked into the roots of the tree if you stand back from it and look at it objectively. So something that would allow us to enjoy the same protection that the new build will enjoy. I recognise that this might be an expensive mitigation, but it would really, really be helpful, because ultimately insurance companies don't particularly want to get involved in the business of, getting compensation for serious house damage. And at the same time, we do not want to be the people to say, I'm afraid the tree must come down, because that's not how we feel about the tree. It is possible, as this build is demonstrating, that you can mitigate for root damage. Please take care of the immediate neighbouring properties that are affected by these roots, and that would be an enormous help. Thank you. So
you think by underpinning your property, this is one measure of protection, and the second is bringing chopping a bit of the tree, maybe 20–30% or something like that, and keep an eye on it.
Exactly, yes. Reducing the height of the tree would help enormously, and also keeping a very close eye on it, because we've lived there 25 years, as I said earlier, and I've never once seen the tree be attended to. What I have seen is a lovely tree grow bigger and bigger, which I'm all in favour of, but not just next door to us.
And a lovely neighbourhood. Thank you.
Lovely neighbourhood, yes, absolutely.
Thank you, Chairman.
Thanks, Mo. Now, are there any questions for either the objector or the applicant before we'll move on to questions with discussion with officers? No. Okay. Well, thank you very much, both of you, for making those points. And I suspect they will be pursued as we move on to the next part of the meeting. So thank you very much for that. So now, colleagues, it's our opportunity to discuss matters with officers. And I think Wala, you wanted to ask a question of officers. So do you want to go ahead? And then I think after you, it'll be Mo. Wala.
Yes, thank you. Officers, I was wondering, following on from Mo's discussion with Andrew, have we looked at the tree, and what have we decided to do about the tree? Have you seen any problems, meaning future problems by the size of the tree and the size of the depth of the roots, or is something we haven't looked at yet?
It is something that's been looked at, and so the canopy of the tree will need to be pruned, and that's set out in the applicant's arboricultural report. Mm-hmm. I think it's key to distinguish between where the burden lies here insofar as structural damage to a neighbour's property by this tree is not something that this application would need to address. It would need to be addressed through a separate application for tree works. Mm-hmm. Which would be done separately to this planning application, which obviously seeks to develop the 54 St Helens site. So it is something that obviously Mr. Parisi has raised and will need to be addressed by the applicant. But in terms of reduction of the root zone, it's something that would need to be done through a separate tree application.
Okay, all right. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Mo, do you want to ask Joe?
Thank you, Chairman. Thanks, Wala, for following up. What about the underpinning? The objector mentioned underpinning. Is this could be turned into something like a condition for the new development? Underpinning neighbours' properties for protection?
I don't think it would meet the tests required for the imposition of conditions, because it's not this development itself that we're considering that's having an impact on the neighbour. It's an existing tree on the site. And as I say, any sort of mitigation works, including works to neighbouring properties or from to the tree itself, would need to be done outside of this planning application.
So how could we make sure that this will be done accordingly?
There's no way through this application, as far as I consider, that would be reasonable, either including a condition or a planning obligation, because they would not meet the tests required.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Mo. Yes, if I can just say, I think that Mr. Whitworth is quite right that obviously the tree has been there for a very long time. A couple of weeks back, I actually went up and I visited the site, and I'm quite familiar. I mean, it's a very, very large tree, and I think I can understand Mr. Parisi's point about it. It's something it is creating problems, but I think this particular application isn't really the correct mechanism for really addressing that entirely sensible issue. Now, I think Charles, do you have a final question to officers, and then I think we can perhaps move on. Charles.
Thank you. I just had a quick question for Mr. Whitworth. I saw a reference in the letter from Henry Peterson at the Residents Association to moving the building on the plot to match the building line of the houses to the north, which he says would ameliorate the sense of enclosure for neighbouring properties. I just wondered what the officer's view had been on that, and whether I mean there are references to loss of light and loss of and sense of enclosure. I think, could you confirm, please, that it's only one window of one property that will lose light over the guideline, but could you just talk to me about what Mr. Peterson's talking about moving the building on the plot, please?
Yes, of course. So yes, there's only one window which slightly breaches the BRE guidelines for daylight and sunlight, but would still retain a very good level of daylight for this area. I think what Mr. Peterson's referring to is previous iterations of this proposal before an application was submitted that had the building line further forward. To place the building line further forward would have an unacceptable impact on the tree in the front garden, and so that's why the building line is where it is.
I see. So it has in fact been moved back.
It has moved further into the plot to ensure that part of the root zone was not impacted.
I see. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. So I think we should move to making a decision. I think actually, as has just been discussed, this application, in fact, was subject to amendment as it went through the planning system. And in fact, we mentioned at the front of the building, but actually the rear extension has been reduced in size. And I think that's an important change, and I think one that for neighbours is extremely welcome. Now, in our pack, you'll see that the recommendation is to grant planning permission and also to delegate authority to the director for the terms of the unilateral undertaking. Obviously, the applicant is in fact the council, so it's a unilateral undertaking as opposed to a Section 106 agreement. What I'm going to do is, I think we can probably move to a vote. I'm going to go down in order. So I'm going to ask if you agree with the recommendation to grant, so or not. Mo, how do you vote?
Chairman, thank you. I really wanted to accommodate the objector's condition and concern and turn it into a condition into this application. But as we have heard from the officers that we don't have the power to do so in the within the plan application committee. So I am in favor and willing to support this application.
No. Thank you for that, and I absolutely agree actually with what you just said, and clearly the applicant is going to be listening to what we say this evening, so I'm sure they're going to take that on board. Councillor Bennett.
I vote to approve, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Idris.
Yeah, I can't seem to get my. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes. Oh, yeah. I vote to approve, Chairman. Thank you.
Very good. And Councillor O'Connor.
I'm in favour of the recommendation as well.
Very good, and I am as well. That is granted in line with the recommendation set out in the report. Thank you very much. If we can now move on to consider the application that relates to the two plots at Acklam Road. Joe, would you like to present that?
Thank you, Chairman. The existing site is a vacant plot of land and is not located in a conservation area, nor is it visible from one. It's located just to the north of the Westway and adjacent to the Almanar Muslim Cultural Heritage Centre to the northeast and the Swinbrook Estate to the west. As you can see, the site is empty, although there is some temporary planting and general open space provision on the site, although the open space use is not a protected one. The Almanar Centre is just to the right of this image, and the Swinbrook Estate to the left. Trellick Tower can be seen further in the distance. The proposals would see a new Part 1, Part 3 and Part 8 storey building constructed on the site to provide 32 new...
Chairman, I can't see the slides. Is it for everyone or only me?
Yeah, Joe, sorry, can you just go back? Okay, so I've got a picture there.
Yeah.
Is that right? That's what you're showing me?
Yes, existing site.
Okay.
I don't see this on my screen.
Have you got that, Mo?
What's happening? Okay, I can see something now. Okay.
All right, good. Okay. All right, that's great. No, it's just a straightforward a photo of the site. Okay, so that's great. So Joe, yeah, go ahead.
The proposals would see a new Part 1, Part 3, Part 8 storey building constructed on the site to provide 32 new homes. 20 of these would be at social rent and 12 would be market homes. The site would also include new community floor space, some of which would be reserved for a residence room for the neighbouring Swinbrook Estate. As before, this is another video showing the existing site and the proposed building. If individual members can press play. The first view is looking northeast with the proposed building. The second view is southwest and with the proposed building. And now southeast. And finally looking back along the Westway, east. The new building would see ground floor community floor space fronting Acklam Road and the residence room floor space for the neighbouring estate at the southwest corner to provide direct links with the estate itself. The residential entrance for all residents is located at the corner of the building. This view is east along Acklam Road and shows the Swinbrook Estate to the left with the new building in the centre. And the single storey element is the new residence room floor space. This view is looking south towards the Westway in the distance with the Almanar Centre on the left, the 8-storey element in the background, and the Part 3 storey element which houses a communal terrace atop it, nearest in view. This view is further back on Acklam Road with the Almanar Centre to the left, and the Swimbrook estate to the right, and the new building in the centre. The proposals would deliver new community floor space, which is supported, and they would also deliver 32 new homes, of which 59% would be affordable by floor space. The tenure split and the unit mix are considered compliant with the requirements of the development plan and the community housing SPD, and like the other phase 1 sites, have been developed in partnership with the council's housing team. The new homes are tenure blind, of a very high quality, and would make a valuable contribution to the borough's housing stock. The new building would be of high architectural quality and of an appropriate scale and massing, responding to the local character and context. The building would not be visible from any conservation areas and would not affect the setting of Trellick Tower. It would optimise the site for much needed housing and would enhance the character and quality of the local area. Given the vacancy of the existing site, the new building would clearly increase the visual presence for neighbours. However, given separation distances, the building would not harmfully increase sense of enclosure, nor impact on privacy. The scheme has been assessed using the BRE guidance, and the majority of assessed windows comply with that guidance. Where there are transgressions, these are generally very minor and still at levels that are very reflective of the general retained daylight and sunlight levels for the urban context. The impacts would therefore not harm the living conditions of neighbours. In addition, the proposals would be acceptable with regards to transport, would ensure the retention of the Acklam Road street trees, secure high quality replacement landscaping, and would meet relevant climate change, sustainability and environmental matters. The proposals would bring with them significant benefits, including the delivery of much needed high quality housing, the optimisation of the site for residential use, and the delivery of a significant amount of new community floor space. There is no identified conflict with the development plan arising from the proposals. And that concludes the presentation.
Good, thank you very much indeed. Colleagues, anyone any questions? We don't have any speakers for this application. Joe, can you just go back to the image that shows the Almanar Centre, because I think clearly, although there are no listed buildings in the area and it's not a conservation area, clearly the Almanar Centre is an important public building, and it's something that's built next to it, has to appear reasonable and appear to have a sensible relationship with an important building. Okay, and if you can just, I think there's another image as well, isn't there, just showing the new building. Okay, and then I think before that, I think you had one or two other images. Yeah, no, on a bit further. One more. Yeah, okay, and then that image.
Yeah, I think it's just those two.
No, that's good, because I think that's important, isn't it? Yeah. I think Councillor Bennett, I think you'd like to ask a question. Is that right, Tom?
Yes, thank you, Chair. My question was around the air quality. And looking at the papers, I know there's seems to be a fair amount of assessment regarding the impact that this development will have on air quality. But what I'd like to ask about is the air quality for the new residents of this building. Obviously, it's right next to the Westway. It's raised up. A huge amount of sort of brake dust and particulate matter from tyres is going to come off the Westway. And I don't know exactly how it travels, but I imagine a fair amount could end up going into this building. Are we going to do, or have we done, testing to see, how much particulate matter will be going into the new residents of this building, and how we can mitigate that, and if it's perhaps worse at a higher level, and if it is of a high and dangerous level, if we can do things like require a filtration system or something like that to improve the air quality within the building?
Yes, of course. So the air quality assessment submitted with the application did do a relatively thorough assessment of the potential air quality impacts on occupiers as well. And it's fair to say that that there are instances where, as you say, given the proximity to the Westway, there will be exceedances of certain pollutants. The development's been designed in a way that responds directly to that, be it designing the open spaces of the site to be at the other end of the building, designing the flats to have winter gardens as opposed to external balconies. And there are air intake systems that would ensure that all the occupants of the new building would be ensured to have not been exposed to adverse air quality as a result.
Okay, well, that's very positive. Will there be additional testing when the building's finished, perhaps? And we have those additional stories there to check that it is no higher than what we expected, and to allow us to, I don't know, potentially put in more measures if it is higher than what we expected.
Yes, you'll see that condition 16 is recommended on this application, which seeks a further air quality assessment prior to any occupation of the development. So that obviously is a final safeguard to have a test before the building's occupied by any of the users.
Okay, great. Yes, I did see that, but so you're saying it's not just for the impact of the building on other people, but it is for the benefit of the new residents as well.
Yes, correct.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. I have a couple more questions, Chair, but I'll let it go on to Charles first.
Yeah, go ahead. No, go ahead, Tom. You go. You've got more questions.
Okay. Yeah. Just what was the next one? No, trees. I know it does specify, I think, 6 trees, and some trees are obviously being taken down as well. I just, it's a reasonable sized site. I just wondered if perhaps being ambitious enough on trees, whether it's is in line with our requirements on new planting, or if it could be slightly more ambitious.
Yeah, sure. I think obviously, given that it's a vacant site at the moment and seeking to optimise the site, there is a limitation to the planting that can be done on site. Obviously, that there are 6 street trees being provided on Acklam Road, which will match those on the other side of the road. Okay. And then there are details being secured of further landscaping by condition 33. So there will be a full scheme of landscaping, for example, on the terrace areas, as well as a green roof on top of the single-storey residence room. So I think we're fairly confident that the chances to maximise planting and landscaping have been taken on the site. Okay, fantastic. And the last one, just very quickly, again relating to Westway. Obviously, there's going to be a lot of noise coming off the Westway there, and I know it said that there's been assessments measuring existing noise levels. I just wanted to check those weren't done in the middle of lockdown when traffic was much lighter, and that we are sure that the insulation will be sufficient for sort of peak traffic. Yes, so the application was submitted before lockdown, so the assessment was certainly undertaken before that. Notwithstanding that the point you've raised is a good one, we've recommended conditions 13, 14 and 15, which all relate to insulating of sound between dwellings uses and the facade of the building itself. And that requires those details to be submitted prior to any works on the building to ensure that essentially, as you say, noise insulation from external and internal uses has been properly designed into the building.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you.
Very good. Charles, I think you're next.
Thank you. I wanted to check about the materials being used. Am I right that it is real bricks on the exterior of the building? And just, I mean, as a minor point of feedback, the first time that I saw what the building looked like from the outside was in the slides here, and I know it's always rather difficult to get the balance right in the councillors' packs, but I think it is particularly important for us to be able to visualise what the building is actually going to look like. So it's quite helpful to have visuals like the one on the screen at the moment put in the pack, because I didn't know that it was going to have this sort of trellis work of what appear to be bricks, but that's just a suggestion, because I mean, part of our job as councillors is, I feel, to be custodians of the aesthetics of the built environment. So it is quite important to be able to see that. Are they real bricks, or are they some kind of panel?
No, so they are brick, and I mean there's a range of materials, but predominantly brick on the elevations, and we've sought details of exactly what brick that will be, including built samples of the bricks before commencement of the main part, the superstructure of the building.
Okay, thank you very much.
Great. Mo, you had a question?
Thank you, Chairman. One clarification and one question. In the summary in the pack 1.3, it states 32 much needed and high quality homes, of which 20 would be affordable homes and 12 would be open market housing. But the presentation says 20 social rented homes. So which one is right?
So the 20 homes will be social rented homes on this site. So
that is wrong. Okay. Yeah. My other comment would be about the air quality Tom mentioned earlier. That was my first question. I know residents in that area tested around Al-Mana, and as you all know, this is the most polluted areas in the borough. And I don't know if the officers cross-examines what the residents say and what equipment they have used and which equipment you have used. I have mentioned this in few other applications last year and the year before. Once we come to applications close to highways or I-40 or things like that, I think we should have a policy or implementing. We need to have industrial purifying systems in this building because it's 10 meters from the motorway. What could we do about this?
I think, as I was describing before, there is a final safeguard in terms of a final air quality assessment to be submitted, and the building does feature air intake systems and purifying systems to that effect, as you raise.
So the final check is going to be conducted by our officers, or outside bodies?
So the final air quality assessment would be undertaken by a expert consultant appointed by the applicant. It would be submitted to the council, and the council's air quality officers would assess that and deem whether or not it was acceptable and if any further mitigation was required.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. And finally, Walla. Walla, did you have a question?
Yeah, sorry. Yes, I have a question. My mouse is not working very well. One of my questions was nicked by Tom. My second question is, you said in condition 33, I think, you're going to do planting. Can I recommend also planting pollinators? because I feel they're very important, and we need to create as many pollinator hotspots and corridors in the borough as possible. Can we somehow make sure that that happens? I don't know if it needs a recommendation or not, but it's just something I think it needs to be going forward considered in every application. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Joe, do we think about that?
Well, the details required by the condition ask for details of all planting. If there were specific types of planting that the committee thought the applicant should consider, perhaps an informative might be the best way to go about that.
Okay, well, can we do that? Can we do that, Chair? Can we, if everybody else agrees, can we put an informative?
Yes, I think actually, let me pick that up. Actually, Mr. Whitworth, I know Councillor Idris is very keen on promoting pollinators, as in bees. And we've got our condition 35 about bird and bat boxes. Would it be possible to perhaps put something in just slightly amend the wording of that to take account of this point of view? I think it would be helpful. Is that something that we could do?
We could certainly do that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I think while that,
yeah,
I think while that might be the way to do it.
Yeah,
we've already condition 35 is already there.
Yeah.
So I think a slight amendment to the wording of that, and I think it would be sensible. We'll leave Mr. Whitworth and colleagues to work out exactly what the wording should be. But I think that would be a perfectly sensible thing to do. Good. Okay, well, I think thank you to everyone for that. I think all the points that we've discussed, I think they're actually all covered by the quite extensive conditions attached to the application. So I think these matters which we've raised, I think are all being addressed. I think we can probably move to make a decision. So with the
Chairman,
slight amendment. Yeah.
May I just come in there? Would it be acceptable to committee, as part of your consideration, that we may, depending on how we can resolve, take the suggestion to condition 34, which talks to the provision of new shrubs, hardscaping, and hard and soft landscaping to encourage pollinators?
Yes, if you think that's a better way of doing it, then I'd certainly go along with that. Yes, so in other words, it would be condition 34 that we would just slightly adjust the wording to take account of promoting pollinators. Yeah, would that be a better way of doing it?
With the committee's approval, officers would take away the fact that you would like the matter dealt with by condition, and we will duly consider where best to place it, Chairman. Yeah, no, I think that's I mean, I think, colleagues, that sounds the right way of doing this. Thank you, Chairman. So, not at all. So bearing in mind that just slight amendment, probably to condition 34 in the end, the recommendation is to grant. So I will go in reverse order and ask if you agree with the recommendation, subject to the very slight amendment to condition. So Councillor O'Connor, are you in favour of the recommendation or not?
I'm in favour. In favour.
Thank you. Councillor Idris?
I'm in favour.
Great, thank you. Councillor Bennett?
In favour of the recommendation, Chair.
Thank you. And Councillor Bactia?
In favour, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you. And I am in favour as well. So that is granted in line with the recommendation. Very good. Thank you. If we can now move on to the Kensal Road application. So, Joe, would you like to introduce that, please?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. So the existing site is an L-shaped block fronting Kensal Road and bordered by a small pedestrian passageway called Wedlake Lane to the east, Bosworth Road to the west, and Hazelwood Crescent to the south. There is currently a Part 1, Part 2 story building on site, which accommodates community floor space, which has been vacant for a number of years. The Grade 2 listed Our Lady of the Holy Souls Church is located immediately adjacent to the site. Here you can see the existing Part 1, Part 2 story building fronting Kensal Road. Here you can see the eastern end of the building and note Wedlake Lane to the boundary of the site. The proposals would see the demolition of the existing building and its replacement with a building of between 5 and 7 stories in height. The building would provide 37 new homes, 17 of which would be at discounted London living rent and 20 at social rent. The development would be comprised entirely of affordable homes. The proposals would also see the replacement of the existing community floor space and a new retail store, as well as local streetscape improvements and a new central communal terrace area. As before, this video shows aerial views of the built form of the existing site as existing and proposed, if individual members can again click play. The first is looking east along Kensal Road, then looking southwest, now northwest, and finally northeast. The ground floor layout sees the replacement community space at the western corner of the site, with an entrance from the corner of Kensal and Bosworth Roads, with the new retail store on the opposite corner with Wedlake Lane. There would be 2 new residential cores, one fronting Kensal Road and the other fronting Wedlake Lane itself. This image shows a detailed aerial CGI of the proposed building in context, showing the proposed building with the new central communal courtyard and the listed church. This shows the proposed building looking west along Kensal Road. This shows the building in the context looking east along Kensal Road with the church to the right and Trellick Tower further in the distance. And again showing the relationship between the church and the building beyond. The proposals would deliver 37 new homes, of which all would be affordable. The tenure split and the unit mix are compliant with the requirements of the development plan and the community housing SPD, and again, like the other phase 1 sites, have been developed in partnership with the council's housing team to directly meet the most pressing need for housing in the borough. The new homes are again tenure blind, of a very high quality, and would make a valuable contribution to the borough's housing stock. The proposals would replace the existing community floor space, but would not provide an equivalent floor space to the existing amount. This reduction is considered acceptable given the poor quality and long-term vacancy of the existing provision, the proximity of other similar facilities, and the high quality and flexibility of the replacement floor space. The inclusion of commercial floor space is also acceptable in this location, given the proximity of the site to the Kensal employment zone and an area of retail deficiency. The new building would be of high architectural quality and of an appropriate scale and massing, responding to local character and context. The building would not be visible from any conservation areas and would not affect the setting of Trellick Tower, and given the high quality architectural response on the site, would enhance the setting of the adjacent listed church. It would optimise the site for much needed housing and would enhance the character and quality of the local area. Given the low-rise nature of the existing site, the new building would clearly increase the visual prominence for neighbours. However, given separation distances, the building would not harmfully increase the sense of enclosure experienced by neighbours, nor impact upon privacy. This includes to the church, where appropriate boundary treatments to be secured by condition would ensure users would not be impacted. The scheme has been assessed using the BRE guidance, and the majority of assessed windows comply with the guidance. Where there are transgressions, these are generally minor and still at levels that are very reflective of the general retained daylight and sunlight levels for the area. The impacts would not therefore harm the living conditions of neighbours. In addition, the proposals would be acceptable with regards to transport, would secure high quality landscaping and improvements to Wedlake Lane, and would meet relevant climate change, sustainability and environmental matters. The proposals would bring with them significant benefits, including the delivery of much needed high quality affordable housing, the optimisation of the site for residential use, and the delivery of high quality replacement community floor space and new commercial floor space. There is no identified conflict with the development plan resulting from the proposals. And that concludes the presentation.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you very much. Any questions, colleagues? No, I've really just got one comment to make. I think it's quite a large site. Personally, I think it responds quite well to the church, which is nearby, and obviously it's near the corner of the park. So I think it's actually quite an attractive building, providing very, very useful and important housing. Any comments, or anyone like to ask Mr. Whitworth anything? I think, Tom, do you want to ask something?
Yes, thank you, Chair. It was just regarding the community use space. I noticed in the papers it says that it's not the community space currently there is larger and not currently in use, and there are other community use spaces in the area. So one might be concerned about the difficulty of finding a tenant for that, given those facts. But nonetheless, we've got this sort of higher quality community use space in. I noticed that it says, I think condition 6 requires that it can't be occupied, condition 5 can't be occupied by a nursery or creche. I wonder, I have no idea what the demand in the area is for that versus other types of community use, but whether we're perhaps making it more difficult to be able to let it out, and whether that's necessary, and perhaps with proper soundproofing that might be an appropriate use. And I at one point it says it's linked to the amount of traffic in the area, another point more to do with the sound, but I feel the sound could maybe be dealt with, and potentially the condition could be altered to say it won't be used as a nursery or creche unless proper soundproofing is put in place or something like that.
Thank you, Councillor Bennett. I think the reason, now you raise it, the reason for the imposition of the condition as set out under condition 5 should probably reference the council's transport policies and policy CT1 as well, because it's a condition that has been directly requested by the council's transportation team, who do not think that a school, nursery or creche and the transport implications of that on the local highway network could be accommodated. So rather than the noise impacts, I think that their concern is that the level of trip generation associated with a school, a nursery and a creche couldn't be accommodated on surrounding streets without having quite an adverse impact. Yeah,
I just wonder whether we need to be quite as strict, and whether we could put something like, as I said before, but even factoring in the traffic, if it were to be used for such use, it would have to be demonstrated that it wouldn't have an adverse impact, or just allow someone who may want to provide a nursery to come and put a plan before us. I mean, it'll probably never happen, but I just wonder whether it's too much just to rule it out altogether. I don't know. I don't know what you think, Chair.
Yeah, I think Tom, that's an interesting point. Actually, I don't have a strong view myself. I can sort of understand why some officers might have put this forward. I don't know what colleagues, what do you think, Waller, Charles, Mo? Do you have a strong view about this? I see Tom's point. I mean, it's a perfectly reasonable argument, but what do you think? Mo, do you have a view
Chair,
on this?
Yeah, I think Tom is making a fair point, really, but we shouldn't make trouble out of it. But it's a fair point. Thank you.
Sorry, I beg your pardon. I didn't quite hear that. So you think it's a fair point, but you don't think we should remove the condition?
No.
No. Okay. Charles Waller, what do you think?
I get the feeling there is a reason the condition is there, and whoever put the condition there actually knows the reason better than us. Maybe they're not elaborating. I get the feeling there is a reason that particularly maybe there are too many creches and too many nurseries in the area, and they don't want to just they want to allow other businesses, other endeavors, more opportunities to come. So I take that view when I see stuff like that.
Okay. Oh, all right. Joe, did you want to add a comment here?
Yes, I think it's important to stress that the impact, the assessment done by the applicant doesn't assess the impact of a school, a nursery or a creche at all on the local transport network. So it's a cautious approach, and one that our transport colleagues have asked for. Okay,
all right. Lastly, Charles, do you have a particular view on this, or are you ambivalent?
Can you hear me? Sorry.
Yes.
I would have had a view on it, but at the crucial moment, just as Tom started talking, I lost about 30 seconds of audio. I'm afraid I missed.
I can summarise. Summarise very quickly for you, Charles.
Yeah, Tom, go
ahead. Just saying, I thought it might be going too far, considering that the community space currently there isn't. They can't find a tenant for it. Might be too restrictive to blanket say it can't be used ever as a nursery or creche, and instead it could say something like it can't be used as a nursery or creche unless a proper sort of plan that takes into account transport and noise generation is approved by officers in the future, or something to that regard.
Mm-hmm.
And this question now for Mr. Whitworth: could they not just come back and apply to vary the condition if they wanted to do that?
That's quite right. They could come back and ask to remove the condition, and that application to remove the condition could be supported by evidence to suggest that the local transport network could accommodate a school, a creche, or a nursery, and we would have to assess that at that time.
Okay.
On that basis, I'm fairly ambivalent about it, because I imagine they could do it.
No, I think thinking about it, that's a reasonable approach. If it turned out it's difficult to find anybody who's interested in using this space, then obviously the condition, the applicant could come back and seek to amend the condition as appropriate. Okay. Are there any other questions to officers? Otherwise, I think we can probably make a decision on this. No. Okay. All right. Well, in that case, having had that discussion, I think the recommendation obviously includes the condition 5 that we've been talking about, and the recommendation is to grant. Can I ask you if you're in favour or not of the recommendation? So, Councillor Bakhtiar first.
In favour, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Bennett.
In favour.
Councillor Idris.
In favour.
Councillor O'Connor.
In favour.
And I'm in favour too. So that is granted with those conditions attached. That is very good. Thank you very much. And now, finally, we can move to consider the application at Hewer Street. Mr. Whitworth.
Thank you, Chairman. The site is 15 to 17 Hewer Street, which is located in the Oxford Gardens Conservation Area. The site fronts Hewer Street to the south, Exmoor Street to the west, and Treverton Street to the north. The Treverton Estate is to the east, and the existing and new sites for the Barbie Primary School are further to the north. The Grade 2 listed St Charles Hospital is opposite the site on Exmoor Street. The existing building on site is 2 stories in height and in a U-shape fronting Hewer Street, with 2 identical wings framing the central part of the building. The building had previously been in use as a funeral director's, although this use ceased some time ago and the building has been vacant since. The building is identified as a positive contributor to the conservation area. The proposals would see the partial demolition of the existing building with retained facades and boundary walls supporting extensions to create a new building of between 3 and 4 stories in height. The building would provide 20 new homes, 10 market and 10 discounted London living rent. As with the previous applications, again, if everyone can press play on this video, which shows the existing and proposed buildings, first looking north, then looking southeast, then looking southwest, and finally looking northwest. The new homes would be accessed through the retained entrance lodge into a central courtyard where 2 new cores serve the market and affordable homes. This shows the existing front elevation of the building onto Hewer Street, and this the proposed, with the extensions visible atop the wings and main roof stories. And this shows the existing rear elevation, and this as proposed, with the new openings to provide windows to the new flats and the roof extensions clearly visible. The proposals would deliver 20 new homes, of which 46% would be affordable by floor space. This would fall just short of the strategic 50% target for public sector land set out in the London Plan and Community Housing SPD. The 10-year split would be 100% discounted London living rent, which again would fall outside of the 50-50 requirement in the local plan and the 70-30 target in the Community Housing SPD. The unit mix would also be weighted towards the delivery of smaller 1 to 2 bedroom homes. However, considering the acceptable portfolio approach, the slight under-provision of affordable housing on this site, and the diversion from unit and 10-year split requirements need to be viewed in light of that portfolio, which delivers 73% affordable housing overall by floor space, at a 10-year split and unit mix that meets identified housing need, and which were developed with the council's housing team to directly meet the most pressing need for housing in the borough. The new homes are 10-year blind, of a very high quality, and would make a valuable contribution to the borough's housing stock, and on balance the development is considered acceptable with regards to housing. The proposals would also see a fairly substantial amount of demolition to what is identified as a positive contributor to the conservation area. The extent of demolition would result in less than substantial harm to the conservation area, which is a designated heritage asset. In accordance with the NPPF, that harm needs to be demonstrated as necessary and outweighed by the public benefits of the scheme. In this case, the overall design quality of the finished building would be high, and the reuse and salvaging of original materials is to be secured by condition. In addition, the constraints of the site and the existing building mean it would be difficult to optimise the use for housing without such intervention. Overall, it is considered that the less than substantial harm is outweighed by the benefits of the proposals, including bringing a vacant building back into use, the high quality architecture of the finished proposals, the reuse of original materials in the finished scheme, and importantly, the provision of 20 new homes, which make a significant contribution to the borough's housing stock. The additional height on the existing building would slightly increase the visual presence, but this would be minor and would not harmfully increase the sense of enclosure experienced by neighbours, nor impact upon privacy. The scheme has been assessed using the BRE guidance for daylight and sunlight, and only 2 of 235 assessed windows fail to comply with the guidance. These transgressions were only slightly outside of what is considered acceptable by the BRE and would likely be imperceptible to neighbouring residents. The proposals would therefore ensure existing living conditions of neighbours are maintained. The proposals would be acceptable with regards to transport, would secure high quality landscaping of the courtyard area, and would comply with relevant climate change, sustainability and environmental matters. The proposals would bring with them significant benefits, including the delivery of much needed high quality housing, optimising the site for residential use. When considering the scheme as part of the portfolio approach to these Phase 1 sites, the provision of amount, tenure and unit mix is considered acceptable, and the benefits associated with the development would outweigh the less than substantial harm to the conservation area. There is therefore no identified conflict with the development plan resulting from the proposals. And that concludes the presentation, Chairman.
Good, thank you very much. Any questions, colleagues? I think this particular site, I think it's unusual because I think some of the existing buildings, they do have some merit and they do contribute to the area. But I personally rather agree with the presentation that suggests the benefits of this scheme do outweigh any harm through the demolition of buildings. I think, Charles, did you want to ask a question?
Yeah, I just wondered if we could flick back to some of the visuals again, but my view is that it seems to be a very good scheme and good architects. It seems to be an improvement and contributing very much needed homes. Thank you.
Yeah, no, I think it's good. Yeah, it's good to have those images back in front of us. Tom, did you have a question?
Yes, Chairman. It was more of a comment, really. I mean, well, firstly, just to agree with Charles and yourself, is very high quality scheme. I think all the schemes in front of us tonight have been very high quality. But yeah, this is the only one where we haven't seen a sort of full colour CGI of what it might look like, which would have been nice. And I do note that there's just a couple of things in the papers where at one point says, more of its original character could have been maintained, and perhaps this is a missed opportunity. And it says much will depend, building's high architectural quality, although much will depend on the quality of the materials chosen and the detailed design of facades. I think I can see how that's true, and it, again, with the sort of colour CGI, we would have got a better feeling for that. So it's just quite a lot is resting on condition 3 regarding those materials and the quality of the materials and detailed design of facades. And I mean, I'm sure officers will sort of exercise condition 3 very judiciously, but just as a comment, really, there's just quite a lot resting on that condition.
No, I think that's a fair point. Mr. Whitworth, do you have anything to add to that? Is it really? I think, as Councillor Bennett says, a lot does rest on condition 3. Do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I think I agree. There's a lot riding on the condition, but I think it's also worth noting conditions 4, 5, 6, and 7. You'll see these are slightly different to the other applications in that they're far more robust in what they're requiring before demolition, for example, on condition 7. So I think that it's fair to say there is a suite of policies which seek to ensure that the high quality of the building is carried through from drawing to reality. And I think it's a fair comment to say that those conditions, they're very robust for that reason.
No, I agree. Mo, did you want to ask a question or make a comment?
It is a comment, Chairman. I would like to agree with the officers and rest of the councillors that because of the necessity, and we know there are some harm, but as you mentioned earlier, the benefits outweighs the harm. So that's why I would like to support this application.
Good. Thank you for that comment. Okay, I think we can probably move to take a decision. So the recommendation is to grant, with obviously all the conditions that we've just been discussing. So I will go back in reverse order. So are we in favour of the recommendation or not? Councillor O'Connor.
I'm in favour.
Councillor Idris.
I'm in favour.
Thank you. Councillor Bennett.
In favour.
And Councillor Bakhtiar.
In favour.
Thank you. And I'm in favour as well. So that is granted with the conditions attached. That concludes our meeting this evening. Thank you very much indeed. And as ever with virtual meetings, I would like to just thank all of the officers who are behind the scenes, who help make these virtual meetings run smoothly. There's actually a lot of work that maybe for a member of the public listening in, you don't quite appreciate, but I'd like to thank them all as well. The next meeting of this committee, I think, will be the 3rd of September, when we will be reconsidering Avon House in Allen Street. Thank you very much and good evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. You are doing a great job.